Hi, it's me again, and this is the second part of our lecture regarding multicultural education. So, in the first part of the lecture, we actually talked about the different dimensions of multicultural education according to Banks. In the second part of this lecture of multicultural education, we're going to talk about the different approaches to multicultural education. I'm talking about the levels of integration, okay? And the last part is about the challenges that some educators could probably or possibly encounter in a multicultural education classroom. So, this is our objective for this time. It is for you to gain knowledge and insight about the four approaches of multicultural education and on how you can probably solve or face various challenges which is related to a multicultural education or classroom. So let's start with our lecture. First thing is about the approaches to multicultural reform. So as you can see in this chart, there are actually four levels, right? So in the lowest level, we have the contribution approach, going up to the additive approach, and then transformative approach, and the highest one, which is the social action approach. This one is actually proposed by the American educator and the father of multicultural education, James A. Banks. So we're going to discuss specifically and in detail what these levels are and how we can probably integrate, okay, or use these approaches in our multicultural classroom. So the first level is the contribution approach. So from the name itself, contribution, contribute, it means that you're going to add something, right? So what are you going to add? It is characterized by the addition of ethnic heroes into the curriculum that are selected using criteria similar to those used to select mainstream heroes for inclusion into the curriculum. So as you can see from these two pictures, these are soldiers and of course one of your national hero. Since my students, for instance, are from the East Asian countries, I try to see to it that whenever I talk about heroes or celebrities or entertainers, I always try to add in their curriculum some of their national heroes in their country so that they can relate with our topic. So, this is actually what this contribution approach is all about. Now, in this approach, the teachers actually can conveniently infuse cultural themes such as holidays and heroes into their curriculum. Since heroes and holidays approach is a variant of this approach, it's actually one of the most common thing, okay, in order to add or study or learn about the other national heroes or about the holidays, for instance, of people in other countries is by means of using this contribution approach. So some teachers, they try to select books and activities that celebrate holidays, heroes, and events from various cultures, of course, depending on the culture of a cultural background of their students. Okay. So some example or one example of this approach too is that the content of other cultures and ethnic group is simply added through special events or celebrations. So teachers try to insert some isolated facts about ethnic and cultural group heroes and heroines into the curriculum, of course, without changing the structure of their lesson plans and units. So in the Philippines case, actually, For instance, in our country, the Department of Education, which is the one in charge of our basic education curriculum here in the Philippines, they identified a portion of 22 days for national and local event celebrations. This is not straight 22 days, okay? So the 22 days are all separated and scattered in the academic calendar of the school. So that is what the contribution approach is all about. The second level, going higher, is the additive approach. As you know, it is an important aspect to the integration of ethnic content to the curriculum. Okay, so why? Because the addition of contents, concepts, themes, and perspective to the curriculum is actually also very important. And whenever you use this additive approach, you don't have to change the basic structure, purpose, and characteristics of the curriculum itself. And another thing which is important about this additive approach is that it allows the teacher to put ethnic content into the curriculum without even changing, reforming, or restructuring the curriculum itself. And lastly, you can actually use this one by means of incorporating literary pieces by and about people from diverse culture into the curriculum. So it's actually quite easy, right? The contributive and additive approach is actually, both of these are actually commonly used in schools, as a part of their curriculum. However, okay, according to Banks, these two approaches, both additive and contribution approach, does not still necessarily transform the thinking of the learners. Okay. Now, anyway, since we're talking about both of this one, I would like to give an example about a teacher who tried to follow this additive approach. Actually, I read her article. She's actually a science teacher. And what she said in her article is that she noticed that while she was talking about different scientists in her class, she noticed that she was only teaching about white and white European and American scientists in their discoveries. So suddenly she realized that why am I only teaching about this certain scientist from this culture? So what she did was she tried to incorporate or add more scientists from around the world into her curriculum because she believed that this would show the students that being a scientist does not mean that they only have to come from one specific culture. So it's one way on how she actually used this approach in her class. So this example is just an example on how you can add lessons, units, and examples that represent a broader or wider range of cultural examples and perspectives so that learners from different culture or different cultural background or ethnicity can also learn from people having another cultural background. So that's actually an example of that teacher. Now, let's move on to the next high level, which is the transformative approach. Transformative. Transform, which means to change, right? If in the first two levels, the contributive approach and additive approach, they do not restructure the curriculum. There are no changes. They just add and contribute, but there's no change in the total curriculum of the school. In the transformative approach is actually different. Why? The good thing with this approach is it enables the students to view concepts, issues, and themes, problems also from several ethnic perspectives and points of view. So, with this transformative approach, it would be very helpful for the students to understand how the knowledge is constructed and how it reflects the experiences, values, and perspectives of its creators. So, in other words, in this approach, the structure, assumptions, and perspectives of the curriculum are changed, okay, so that the concepts, events, and issues taught are viewed from the perspectives and experiences of a range of racial, ethnic, and cultural groups. So I'll repeat, okay, in this approach, they actually have to change almost everything, the concepts, events, and issues taught in the classroom, so that we can have various views from different perspectives. Now, why this approach? Why use this transformative approach? It is because multicultural education seeks to actualize the idea of e pluribus unum. E pluribus unum means out of many, one, okay? Which is to create a society that recognizes and respects the culture of its diverse people and united within a framework of democratic values which are actually shared by all. So that is the main goal of the transformative approach. Now, going up to the highest level of the going up to the highest level of these approaches by banks, the level of integration. The fourth one is the social action approach. Now, the social action approach is the highest stage of incorporating multicultural strategies into the classroom. So, what is this all about? Okay, let's see. In this approach, additional thing is added for the learners to make decisions. So the learners are highly involved in this approach in decision making and to take actions related to the concept and even issue or problem that they are studying or problem which are actually given to them. So if you notice, this approach includes all of the elements of transformation approach. However, okay, the good thing is that it requires all of the students to take action related to the issue or problems that they have studied in the unit. So let's see in detail what do the learners do inside the classroom. So for instance, the learners study a social problem such as, okay, let's read the question. What actions should we take to reduce prejudice and discrimination in our school? So for instance, if this kind of problem is given to the learners have to make a decision on how they can solve it. Okay, so, okay, what do? Of course, very important thing. They have to gather data about the problem which is given to them. After gathering the data, they have to analyze their own values and beliefs about the data that they have gathered. And then after that, they can synthesize their knowledge and values as a group. Okay, so they can collect what is the point of view of the different learners in the group. So they can also learn from each other, right? And then after that, they will identify the alternative courses of action which they can use to solve the problem which is given to them. And the highest level, it is for them to decide what actions are they going to take in order to solve the social problem. So if you notice, decision making and social action are emphasized to teach the students thinking and decision making skills. And as you know, decision making is very important for their age on how they can probably reduce this kind of prejudice or problem in our society. So one thing is for this approach is to empower the learner and help the learner acquire a sense of political efficacy, right? Which is the reason why this level is actually the highest level. Now, I have one question. What do you think is the main goal of the social action approach? Why is it the highest form or the highest level of integration? Okay, let's see. Now, according to Banks, the goal of this approach is not only to teach students to respect differences between groups, but the most important thing is to allow them to negotiate and recognize inequality and discrimination in the school and society, thus empowering them to become actively involved in groups that works for a change. So you might think that it's too ideal. However, if this is implemented again properly, I think this is highly possible and effective. Don't you think so? Okay. Now, according to Banks, these approaches are commonly mixed and blended in actual teaching. One approach, such as the contributive approach and additive approach, can actually be used as a vehicle to move to other and more intellectually challenging approaches, such as the transformative approach and the social action approach. So they are actually highly connected, isn't it? Okay, so just to give you a short summary about Banks for levels of integration content. So from the first level, level 1, which is the contribution approach, where heroes, holidays, and food also is possible, can become a special focus on a particular day, recognizing the contributions of various groups. To the second level, which is the additive approach, where content, concepts, themes, and perspectives are added to the curriculum without even changing the structure of the curriculum. To the third level, which is the transformative approach, which is to structure the curriculum, okay, and change the curriculum in order to enable the learners to view concepts, issues, events, and themes from the perspective of diverse ethnic and cultural groups. To the highest level, which is the social action approach, which is to make the learners make decision because it is actually a very important skill, okay? And they have to make decisions in important issues and try to take actions on how to solve those problems. So this one is just the summary of Banks' 4 levels of integration content, or for some they call this one as the approaches to multicultural education. So I hope you understood what these levels are. Now, the next part of this lecture is for you to think about this question. What do you think could be some of the challenges of multicultural education? Is multicultural education easy or not? Well, every person usually think that a teacher's job is easy, but actually that is a very huge mistake. Why? Because as the number of challenges teachers face every new lesson is incredibly big, And this happens in the classroom where teachers and students speak the same language and understand each other perfectly. Every day actually is a challenge for teachers, most specifically in a multicultural classroom. So let's just see some of the challenges which the educators could probably face, or some of the educators face in a multicultural classroom. Okay, the first one is language barrier. Frankly speaking, unlike other, normal kind of classroom compared to a multicultural classroom, issues in multicultural education make the teaching and learning process a real trial for both teachers and students. So, the language barrier is actually, I experienced this one. Language barrier is actually one of the challenges that we educators usually face. Why do you think so? Because, in the point of view of the learners, they have to gain knowledge with a language that they themselves actually do not understand twice harder than in a regular classroom. So how does it look like? Let us say that I have students who actually have different cultural backgrounds, and of course the students who actually is new in the environment, and students who actually do not know that much about the language. My experience was that student was just staring at me. So I was thinking, why is this student staring at me? So when I talked to him, he told me frankly that the language is actually not easy for him. Why? Because there are two things that he has to do, his brain has to do, and that is to gain knowledge and at the same time understand the language, which is totally true. So the students actually who is trying to cope up are actually having a hard time. But the point there is that the teacher has to know how to handle that kind of situation, just in case this kind of situation occurs in the classroom. Okay, so one of the challenges of multicultural education is the language barrier. Another challenge is the domination of different learning styles. Despite the fact that students could differ in race, religion, or even family background, these young people can also absorb information in a variety of ways. They can be accustomed to other teaching approaches, methods, and ways of material presenting, so it will take time to get used to everything new. In other words, my point there is that the teacher has to offer his students all the learning styles for the learners to grasp the information much better, right? Okay, now let's see what are the other challenges of a multicultural education classroom, okay, or multicultural education. Thirdly is nonverbal behavior, right? Frankly speaking, sometimes it is much easier to understand a foreign language than a body language of another ethnic group. Why? It is because if the teacher is actually not aware of the nonverbal behavior characteristic of the students or society he or she is in, it might actually bring a lot of trouble for the teacher and the learner. And of course, it can greatly affect the learning and teaching process inside the classroom. Now, nonverbal behaviors such as raising hands, maintaining eye contact, head nods, okay, can have a completely different meaning in another country, let alone any other body signs. So for the East Asian countries, one of the not problem, I guess, but yes, when I started teaching East Asian students, one of the challenges for me is to maintain eye contact. I really want to maintain eye contact with them because I want to see how much they understood through their eyes. Okay, I want to see if they understood what I was saying. I want to see if they have some question, and I want to see how sincere they are in listening to the lecture or in the class. However, as it was actually not easy for me to maintain an eye contact for them because I learned that it's actually quite impolite for them to look into the eye of their teacher. So since they are in a new environment, I told them that in this new environment where you are in, maintaining eye contact is actually the other way around, or the opposite meaning of what you have in your country. So if you do that here in the Philippines, or actually in even Western countries, maintaining eye contact is actually being polite, right? Showing respect to, or showing how your sincerity to the person whom you're talking to. But again, as a teacher, you have to know the cultural backgrounds of your students because it could affect the learning and teaching process of your class. Next one, another challenge is the diversity of extracurricular activities. As children learn from other cultures, sometimes they learn that their culture and the culture of their classmate quite differ from them. So it means that the learners actually could probably the learners should get accustomed to new traditions, a way of life, relations in this new society. So it's actually the job of the teacher to show and tell about the customs and traditions in the new society where the students are. How? Through giving or by giving extracurricular activities like holidays or some important days that the children should learn about. Okay, another challenge in multicultural education is teaching communication skills. Sometimes learners may feel shy or unable to express their opinions because of the anxiety not to be understood by the others. So, an example is in some Muslim countries, boy will or might avoid socializing with girls, while in the new environment where they are in, it is actually a normal experience. So, it is actually, again, the task of the teacher to encourage students, of course, to discuss issues, speak up their mind on a variety of topics in order to promote a pleasant and classroom atmosphere. So, understanding each other and letting the other students understand their classmate on why he or she acts that way is actually very helpful for the others to understand. Okay, and if you actually do that as a teacher, you can promote actually a pleasant classroom atmosphere. Now, the role of the teacher here, okay, is actually vital. Why? Because the teacher is the person who builds the atmosphere during the class and through equal treatment. So, with the equal treatment that we can observe inside the classroom, it can make it easier for the students coming from different backgrounds to feel good and to feel equal or accepted in the class or in the group where they are in. So these challenges happened for some teachers. It's actually an experience of some educators. So if we experience this kind of challenges, at least we already know how to handle them. Okay? So if you're going to ask me, until now I'm still talking about multicultural education. My question is, so why is multicultural education important? I've been discussing from my first part of the lecture until this time. So I hope that you can answer this question. It is very important. Multicultural education is very important and necessary concept in our diverse world. Why? because we can only provide equal education for all students if we educators, staff, and administrators understand multiculturalism wholeheartedly. So that's it. I hope you learned many things about multicultural education, the various dimensions, the different approaches, and of course, some challenges that teachers could possibly experience inside the classroom.